In the arts, maximalism, a reaction against minimalism, is an aesthetic of excess and redundancy. The philosophy can be summarized as a oe more is more contrasted with minimalist motto less is more. Literature. The term maximalism is sometimes associated with postmodern novels, such as by David Foster Wallace and Thomas Pynchon, where digression, reference, and elaboration of detail occupy a great fraction of the text. It can refer to anything seen as excessive, overtly complex and showy, providing redundant overkill in features and attachments, grossness in quantity and quality, or the tendency to add and accumulate to excess. Novelist John Barth defines literary maximalism through the medieval Roman Catholic Church's opposition between two roads to grace, the via negativa of the monk to the first cell and the hermite to the first cave, and the via affirmativa of immersion in human affairs, of being in the world whether or not one is of it. Critics have aptly borrowed those terms to characterize the difference between Mr. Beckett, for example, and his erstwhile master James Joyce, himself a maximalist except in his early works. Takeshi Ishiwari elaborates on Barth's definition by including a postmodern approach to the notion authenticity. Thus, under this label come such writers as, among others, Thomas Pynchon and Barth himself, whose bulky books are in marked contrast with Bartholomew to the first's relatively thin novels and collections of short stories. These maximalists are called by such an epithet because they, situated in the age of epistemological uncertainty and therefore knowing that they can never know what is authentic and inauthentic, attempt to include in their fiction everything belonging to that age, to take these authentic and inauthentic things as they are with all their uncertainty and inauthenticity included. Their work intends to contain the maximum of the age, in other words, to be the age itself, and because of this their novels are often encyclopedic. As Tom Leclerc argues in The Art of Excess, the authors of these masterworks even gather, represent, and reform the time to the first's excesses into fictions that exceed the time to the first's literary conventions and thereby master the time, the methods of fiction, and the reader. Music. In music, Richard Taruskin uses the term maximalism to describe the modernism of the period from 1890 to 1914, especially in German-speaking regions, defining it as a radical intensification of means toward accepted or traditional ends. This view has been challenged, however, on grounds that Taruskin uses the term merely as an empty signifier filled with a range of musical fiat heuris big orchestration, motivic and harmonic complexity, and so only that he takes to be typical of modernism. Taruskin, in any case, did not originate this sense of the term, which had been used by the mid-1960s with reference to Russian composers of the same period, of whom Sergei Prokofiev was the last. Contemporary maximalist music is defined by composer David A. Jaffe as that which embraces heterogeneity and allows for complex systems of juxtapositions and collisions, in which all outside influences are viewed as potential raw material. Examples include the music of Edgard Varese, Charles Ives, and Frank Zappa. In a different sense, Milton Babbitt has been described as a professed maximalist, his goal being, to make music as much as it can be rather than as little as one can get away with. Richard Toupe, on the other hand, considers that musical maximalism is to be understood at least partly as anti-minimalism. Visual arts. Maximalism as a term in the plastic arts is used by historian Robert Pincus Witten to describe a group of artists, including Julian Schnabel and David Saul, associated with the turbulent beginnings of neo-expressionism in the late 1970s. These artists were in part stimulated out of sheer despair with so long a diet of reductivist minimalism. This maximalism was prefigured in the mid-1960s by certain psychoanalytically oriented paintings by Gary Stefan. Charlotte Rivers describes how maximalism celebrates richness and excess in graphic design, characterized by decoration, sensuality, luxury and fantasy, with examples including the work of illustrator Cam Tang and artist Julie Verhoeven. Art historian Gao Minglu connects maximalism in Chinese visual art to the literary definition by describing the emphasis on the spiritual experience of the artist in the process of creation as a self-contemplation outside and beyond the artwork itself. These artists pay more attention to the process of creation and the uncertainty of meaning and instability in a work. meaning is not reflected directly in a work because they believe that what is in the artist's mind at the moment of creation may not necessarily appear in his work. Examples include in the work of artists, Cao Kai, Ding Yi, and Guy Dexin. See also, Hysterical Realism, New Complexity. References. Further reading, Delville, Michelle, and Andrew Norris. Frank Zappa, Captain Beefheart and the Secret History of Maximalism. Cambridge, UK, Salt Publishers. ISBN 1-84471-059-9. Menzies, Flo. Novaya Sutilia, Essays zur Maximalistischen Musik, edited by Ralph Paland. Hofheim, Woke Verlag. ISBN 978-3-95593-058-5. Pincus Witten, Robert. Maximalism. Arts Magazine 55, No. 6 172 €76. Pincus Witten, Robert. Entries, Art at the Turn of the Decade. Art and Criticism Series. New York, Out of London Press. ISBN 9780915570201. Pincus Witten, Robert. Post-Minimalism into Maximalism, American Art 1966 €86. Ann Arbor, UMI Research Press.